What's doing, everybody? Today is Tuesday, March 3rd. Iranian leadership is wiped out in Operation Epic Fury. Joining me today for reaction is former Navy SEALs Jack Carr and Bill Brown. I'm AlecLace. This is the AlecLace Show.
The American family is under attack. Parents are the underdog of this nation. Your children are being indoctrinated. That's right. Your children. They do not belong to the state. They do not belong to the school system. They belong to you, the parents, as a blessing from God our Father. So let's preserve, protect, and fight for the American family together. You're listening to the AlecLace Show. The future is family.
All right, welcome everybody to the AlecLace Show. Happy and honored as always to be here with you guys. Thank you for tuning in. If you're watching the broadcast as it streams live on Rumble, please get down there, hit that share button. Let's get as many people into the live broadcast as possible. Wherever you are listening, please hit the follow button and share it around your social medias, all right? Well, the Ayatollah is dead. Operation Epic Fury has wiped out Khamenei and much of the Iranian leadership. It was a, by all accounts, successful mission. Not over yet. They are still, I know that just this morning, they were doing a meeting to see who was going to be the new leadership, and they wiped that building out, so more leadership is going down. But President Donald Trump, people act like this was the surprise attack of the century here. They make it sound like this was some kind of big sneak attack. Nobody saw this thing coming. People are obviously milking this for everything it's worth as far as impressions and clicks and media. I mean, you have to do it. It's the biggest story that there is right now. But people are trying to play as if like this was some kind of like, you know, surprise attack. This has been coming for a very long time, almost since Operation Midnight Hammer last year when he bombed the nuclear site over there in Iran. President Trump has been warning the Iran regime for months that they better come to the table and negotiate. They have refused every single time. This one, just back on February 20th or February 19th, President Donald Trump, this is from Reuters, the headline, Trump warns Iran of bad things if no deal made, sets a deadline of 10 to 15 days. Well, it seems like that turned out to be true. Bad things did come for Iran. They had the opportunity to make the deal. They chose not to. Now they're not here anymore. I mean, they got wiped out. Trump had been talking to them about this for months leading up to this Operation Epic Fury. He packed the Arabian Sea there. He practically had an armada that was stationed outside of there. They brought in the USS Abraham Lincoln. They brought in everything but One-Eyed Willie's pirate ship. So signs were there that something was coming. An imminent attack was about to go down. Just like we saw with Venezuela, all of a sudden all these U.S. Military ships, Navy ships showed up outside of Venezuela's door, and it was like, gee, I wonder what these guys are doing here. Boom, now Maduro is sitting in a Brooklyn prison. So Trump, one thing it does is it sends messages to the rest of the world. When Trump gives you a deadline, he is serious. When he tells you to do something in a negotiating stance, he now has evidence to say, look, this is what happened to the last guy that said he wasn't going to play ball. Okay, and so I think it's good leverage for President Donald Trump going forward here as he tries to make deals moving forward with this. But President Donald Trump has been telling this Iranian regime that they got to negotiate, no ballistic missiles, no nuclear weapons, and they didn't listen, and he went over and whacked them. I mean, that's really just what happened. So you have you had Joe Biden, but Joe Biden gave him a stern warning. He said, don't. Kamala Harris, the same thing, don't. President Donald Trump went over there and made sure they can't. That's the big difference here. And no matter what's going to happen, you're going to have the left melting down no matter what he does. So you have to tune out the CNNs and the MSNBCs because no matter what Trump does, it's not like all of a sudden CNN is going to give you honest reporting and be like, well, this might have been a good idea for Trump to do because it saves the world, protects innocent people. They're never going to do that. It's Trump did something wrong. That's all you're going to hear from them all day long, no matter what he does. So you have to tune them out. And then you have the people on the right that are going to criticize him now because they're out of the closet. You have all these Trump podcasters or whatever you want to call them, right-wing podcasters, anti-Israel podcasters that are out of the closet now as far as hating President Donald Trump. These are pretty much the ones that were on the DeSantis train. They've been lukewarm about Trump, waiting for their opportunity to come out of the closet. They're out now. they're against Trump. So you have to kind of tune them out too. They're the ones they call them the black pillars or whatever it is. You tune them out. You're trying to look for somebody that's going to give you an honest breakdown, an honest shakedown of what is happening. Now, you guys have watched the show. I'm not a geopolitical expert by any means. When it comes to all of this stuff, Beirut, Lebanon, Libya, Syria, I am the last person you want to go to for the history of the region. And I think many Americans are that way. So I feel like you're kind of forced to have this opinion of Middle East politics that you really don't know what you're talking about. I don't. I already give that away. So what I can do is I can bring in people who have an idea, who had a stake in the game, and hear their opinion. I mean, that's the best I can do is, if I don't know the information, I'll go with somebody who might have the information. And so today I'm going to bring on two former Navy SEALs who have both served in active combat missions in Iraq, in Afghanistan, know all about Iran and their proxies. And so we'll hear what they have to say, and, I'll learn something along with you. And, of course, unfortunately, we had soldiers that have died in Operation Epic Fury. I think the toll is 6 because one of the bases was hit by a stray rocket. I mean, that's what it seems like the reporting. Some of the stuff, a little all over the place, but it seems like that is the case. Very sad. We pray for those families. You have new Gold Star families that were just born in the last couple of days here. Very sad. You can expect that the left and the media is going to stand on those dead bodies to make their case against President Donald Trump. And don't you dare for a second believe that it doesn't weigh heavily on President Donald Trump. I'm sure this was a very last-minute resort that he got to this point. He tried everything diplomatically. It didn't work. For whatever reason, he found that the time was now. If not now, when? I don't have the information that he has, right? So he decided that this was the time to end the nuclear program, end the threat of Iran and all these different proxies around the world. And look, this ain't the Olympics here, people, right? This is not the Olympics. This is not like you have some Olympic skater that talks bad about the country and you root for her to lose. Like we root for America here, right? Whether you're on board or you're not on board with your psychology or your philosophy, you root for our troops over there in this war or in this strike, in this military conflict or combat, whatever you want to call it. You root for America here, right? I hated Obama. I rooted for America. I prayed for America to win when we were fighting over there during that forever war. I celebrated when they got bin Laden. I hated Barack Obama. Celebrated when we got bin Laden. You can hate Trump all you want. You should be smiling that Khamenei is dead. We should be happy about that. You should celebrate that. This guy was a pure evil. There's an evil in the world. Not according to the Washington Post. They painted this guy like he was Papa Smurf. They put an obituary, with his white fluffy beard and it's just a joke how they eulogized him. You would think they're talking about somebody's sweet grandfather, the way that they portrayed him in their obituary in the Washington Post. With his soft, fluffy white beard and his, charismatic whatever. You read it, you'll want to puke. So, the missions are continuing. What everybody's fear is, and we're gun-shy by this, is that we're going to get dragged into a forever war. That is what everybody fears. We've all seen it with Iraq and Afghanistan. We were told that there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Turns out there was none. And now the comparison is we're told that they're building nuclear bombs. And are they really doing that? Is that what led us into this? It seems like all signs point to yes. More so than there's more indicators that Iran was enriching uranium and trying to build a nuclear weapon than there ever was that there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So I think we're already ahead of the game in that sense. And I also think we're ahead of the game as far as lessons learned from that 20-year war, the global war on terrorism. And, we pray that we have. And I know that Trump is not going to do something to get us into. I have faith in President Donald Trump. And I know that President Donald Trump loves our men and women who serve in the military. And he's going to do everything possible within his power to limit our casualties as he pulls off this operation to rid the world of this terrorist group. Now, I think a lot of it. Now, again, I'm just from following the news and doing this political stuff. If you've been watching, it seems like the Venezuela thing might have happened strategically because he secured all that oil from Venezuela. He cuts that off from China or from the rest of the world. And now he has that in the back pocket because now we know that the oil in Iran, there's going to be problems with oil coming out of the Middle East, but he's got this over here. So that may have been like a strategical plan. I don't know. I would imagine this was all months in the making. But then it seems like, you had Israel bombing the snot out of Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas. Those are the three major proxies of Iran. Iran funds those three, like, I guess, gangster, gangs, the Houthis, the Hezbollah, and Hamas. They've been you wonder how many more missiles these guys got left. I mean, they've been bombing the shit out of these little proxy, Iranian proxies for a year. So you wonder how many they have left. I mean, who knows? But they weakened. All three of those have been weakened over the last year or two or since October 7th. They've all been weakened. Iran has been completely weakened after the Operation Midnight Hammer. Their forces are, nowhere near in comparison to ours. And they have no chance against our military. So I guess the timing was right. We go over there. We wipe this out. And can we stop? I mean, here's the mission success. We don't have to hear about it anymore. I mean, that's the mission success. We never have to hear. We've been hearing from Netanyahu for 30 years. Oh, they're going to build a nuclear weapon. They're going to build a nuclear weapon. We'll go over there and stop them. Now, hopefully, they've done it, and we don't want to hear about it anymore. I mean, that's the goal here. That's the success. We never hear about Iran and nuclear weapons ever again. That's success. And for the Iranian people, I don't know the Iranian people. I have no idea how they are. I know I've heard that they're oppressed, that they wiped out 30,000 of them in the last year or so. That women are treated like dog shit. I mean, we know gays are thrown from rooftops. We've all heard these stories. I have no idea. That's what we go on. We base it on what we hear. Sounds very bad. Hopefully that these people can return to some type of normalcy and live a better life. That sounds great. I really don't have a stake in that. I'm not really interested in it. I'm not really too concerned about other people's day-to-day lives across the ocean. I want to worry about our lives here. I think most people do, and I think Trump does as well. But Trump is the president. He's got a deal, and with all this stuff going on around the world, so that's on him. And I support him. And it's like they make it sound like as if like now you're like, oh, you're a warmonger and all this stuff. No, I'm not. No, nobody wants to see our troops go into a 20-year war. That does not seem like this is what it is. It seems like the same thing with the Operation Midnight Hammer. We went in, we blew up some shit, and we got out of there. Seems like that's what we're doing now. It's a much bigger operation. We've had some success. We took out the leader of the country that's been there for 47 years. So we'll see what else comes along. And people are talking about, oh, now Russia's going to do this and China's going to do that. So far, all Russia and China have done is write a strongly worded letter. I mean, that's basically what they have done. Same thing they did with Operation Midnight Hammer. They wrote a strongly worded letter. Can we condemn it? Russia right now can't even take care of Ukraine. 2-3 years, they're fighting Ukraine. They lost over 200,000 troops. I mean, that's the low estimate. The low estimate is 200,000. The higher estimates is like 350,000. So Russia's military is being depleted just from that. I mean, you're talking about Ukraine. 2.5, 3 years, they're fighting Ukraine. We're going to worry about Russia right now? So, I don't see that. And the last thing Russia needs to do is get involved in another conflict. They're losing people, like clockwork over there. 200,000 minimum that they've lost. What is that? That's like 4 times what we lost in the Vietnam War. They've lost in the Ukraine War. I mean, it's a brutal thing. But then again, we don't, who knows what's going on with all that? Because, we don't see, much footage from that war at all. But anyway, so I don't think I would worry too much about Russia, China. The good thing is we cut, China away from Russia. China away from Iran's oil. I'm guessing. Again, I'm not the guy that has this, so I'm going to play along here. I try to follow along. I'm going to read up. I spend most of my time, as you know, worrying about domestic issues here, what's going on in America. That's where my concerns are. So I'm going to bring on a few guys who have honorably served our country around the world, especially in the global war on terror, in the GWAT 20-year debacle that we've had. They've put their lives on the line. They've lost friends in battle. They know the cost of war better than most. And so I'm going to bring them on to get their opinion and hear what they have to say, because I think it matters. I mean, I think it's important. And again, they're far better than me. So first up, I'm going to bring on Jack Carr. I haven't had a conversation with Jack Carr in quite a long time. I had him on First Class Fatherhood a bunch of times when he was writing the James Reese novels. I remember when he came out with the first one. He's blown up completely in a good way. His Terminal List went super viral. His books have gone crazy viral. He got the deal with Amazon Prime for the Terminal List TV series. He's got Chris Pratt playing in it. I remember when he was on the show saying he didn't want to let the cat out of the bag of who he had in mind to play the character, and he nailed it. He got Chris Pratt. So happy to watch this guy's success. He is a 20-year veteran of the Navy, almost all that time as a Navy SEAL. He served in both Iraq, Afghanistan. He served in the most Iranian-influenced section of southern Iraq. So this should tie in. But the main reason is last year he came out with a book, Targeted Beirut was the title of the book. It's one that I have not read, but it's Targeted. I ordered it yesterday on Amazon. Targeted Beirut, the 1983 Marine barracks bombing and the untold origin story of the war on terror. All right, so Jack Carr, obviously multi-time best-selling New York Times best-selling author. Honored to get him on. Right after this, I'll have my friend Navy SEAL Bill Brown. He'll come on. We'll hear his take on it. So let's dive into this right now with Jack Carr on the AlecLace Show.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm at the White House with my dad, and you're watching the AlecLace Show.
You're listening to the AlecLace Show. The future is family.
All right, joining me now, New York Times best-selling author, former Navy SEAL, Jack Carr. Welcome to the AlecLace Show.
How are you? It's good to see you. It's been a couple minutes since we last looked up.
It has been too long. I was looking. I know I have. This is the advanced reader copy of The Devil's Hand. I know I got one of the Terminal Lists somewhere. I couldn't find it. I said, I got to find it. I remember way back when this. Yep.
I have the latest one right here, but I don't send these out anymore. Like, they send me a few, and I tell my publicist not to send them out because these are galley copies for anyone listening or watching, and it means it's still a rough draft because I'm still making. By tomorrow morning, I have my last pass edits on this book going in, and so this is a rough draft. So I don't like anything that's not the best it can possibly be being out there in the wild. So I don't send these out anymore. So
I have loved watching your success. You have been crushing. I remember when you were on my show way back on the First Class Fatherhood, you had Chris Pratt in mind. You didn't want to let the cat out of the bag. You end up getting him. I mean, the show has been a big hit. So props to you for what you've done. Now, on the flip side of that, I got to be honest, I have not read Targeted Beirut. And one of the reasons is I'm disinterested with the Middle East and the whole thing. I don't find it very attractive, that whole thing. I eat these James Reese books up like nothing. But the truth about this, I'm not the geopolitical guy. I've admitted that. So you got the book here, the 1983 Marine barracks bombing and the untold origin story of the war on terror. So how does this bombing, what do we need to know about that ties into what we're seeing right now today with Operation Epic Fury?
Yeah, well, first I decided to do that to break into the nonfiction space. That was always part of my strategic plan. And looking at all the different terrorist events over the decades, I kept going back to Beirut 1983 because it was just so impactful when it comes to our foreign policy. And its specter still looms large today over that foreign policy all these decades later. So I remember the Newsweek and the Time magazine covers when I was a kid. Very impactful. I was very young at the time, obviously. But so I kept coming back to that. So what happened was April 1983, our embassy in Beirut is bombed, kills 63 people, 17 Americans, most of them working for the CIA. Then we have a very bloody summer with our Marines there trying to keep the peace in Lebanon. And then we get to October 1983, and that's the Marine headquarters and barracks bombing, kills 241 servicemen, the largest loss of life from the Marine Corps since Iwo Jima in World War II. So the book that you mentioned there is also a book about this the rescue efforts as well, because what I knew about the event, but when you hear about so many people dying in something like that, it almost dehumanizes dehumanizes it. You just have a number attached to like a picture of rubble, and then that's your vision, and you move on from it. What you don't realize is that there are all these Marines digging through that rubble with their bare hands, with K-bar knives, with shovels, with crowbars if they can find one, trying to search for survival, digging these guys out. There are just so many stories of people buried in that rubble and getting pulled out and surviving. Of course, 241 killed. But what happens in the aftermath of that event is important and has a direct link to today, in that the administration at the time, the Reagan administration, talked very tough after that event. And then what happened was they left very quietly in early 1984. So what it did is teach our enemies that terrorism works. And when it comes to Iran, what specifically taught them is that terrorism via proxies work, because it was a proxy force that hit us there. There's a direct line between Beirut 1983 and 9/11 because of what we taught our enemy. So there are lessons in the pages of history, and I figure the least I can do is put those out there in a book, in an audiobook, for people to read or listen to.
Well, I mean, I know that you're a big fan of history, and I know I love your posts. You put even in the film industry, when you post up stuff, you'll post, books about, the original Rambo or whatever it may be. I know you like that history. Were you, when you were serving, during, the GWAT, were you aware of all of this, like the history with or is this something you came to after you're serving? Because I know it says there you served in the most Iranian influenced section of southern Iraq. Did you know all this, or did you look this up after you were already there?
Well, I learned a lot, of course, doing this book, because that was the sole focus of my life for about a year. But I've always been a student of history. I've been a reader my whole life. You can tell by the library behind me. I've already outgrown this library. Need more space for books. My mom was a librarian, so I grew up surrounded by books and a love of reading. I'm reading all the masters on the fiction side of the house. So I'm reading Nelson DeMille and A.J. Quinnell and J.C. Pollock and Mark Olden and David Morrell and Tom Clancy, all these guys who are my professors in the art of storytelling. But I'm also reading all the nonfiction growing up too. Anything I can find on warfare, specifically terrorism, insurgencies, counterinsurgencies, special operations forces. And so all of that became a part of my foundation, and I never stopped reading. And then I added to that my experience on the ground in Iraq and Afghanistan, and all of those things came together at the right time as I was leaving the military to write the terminal list. So I've always been a student of history. I've always been a student of warfare. I approach everything from that perspective as a student. So I was very aware of these things when I was serving, and I was always reading, trying to increase my knowledge, give myself good historical background on things, because I believe that made me a better leader and a better operator downrange.
Well, Jack, one thing is, why do you think it is that, like, we had the 20-year with Iraq and Afghanistan? Why do you think it is that we never attempted to take out the Iranian leadership then, during that period of time, even though they were funding a lot of the terrorism, they were funding a lot of the stuff? Why did we leave them kind of out of it and not go after that leadership? Why now? Like, why now is it like a must-have? We got to take them out, and it wasn't during that time.
Yeah, well, earlier on, so after 1979, then after 1983 specifically, then there's other events that are tied back to Iranian proxies. Another one is the abduction of William Francis Buckley, also in Beirut in 1984. He's tortured mercilessly through that year. Probably dies in summer to fall of 1985. We're not sure, but his body is eventually recovered in 1991. He was the CIA chief of station in Beirut. He's buried in Arlington National Cemetery, former Army Special Forces guy, 2 Silver Stars, one from Korea, one from Vietnam. Incredible history right there. But there was a series of terrorist events, and for each one, we continued to treat it for the most part as a law enforcement issue, all the way up till September 11th. 2001. So we have Al Qaeda declaring war on us twice, 1996, 1998. We have the USS Cole bombing. All of these things continue to be treated as a law enforcement issue rather than a military issue. And that stems back to 1983, how we responded to the Marine headquarters and barracks bombing there, which essentially was no response. That was a long way of answering your question, in that if we could go back, there's a whole host of reasons why I would like to go back to the 80s and just keep going back from January 1st, 1980 to December 31st, 1989, and just keep doing that. There's a whole host of reasons. But I think one of them would be to respond differently to October 1983 in Beirut from the Reagan administration, to treat these proxy terrorist groups as terrorist organizations and as an intelligence and military problem. We had special operations forces. We had a robust intelligence network. Of course, we're learning over time. It's nothing compared to what we have today. But had we treated it as a military issue and an intelligence issue back then, I think it could have stemmed a lot of the terrorism that was to come. We didn't. So this is, and now we go through 20 years of war in Afghanistan, all these years of war in Iraq, and now we come up to what we're dealing with today. So we have Iran, and we have multiple administrations over the decades that from both parties that all have the same pillar of U.S. foreign policy when it comes to Iran, and that is not allowing them to have a nuclear weapon. That's both parties, multiple decades, and now we get to this stage. And of course, it's hard for somebody like me. It's a hard sell for somebody like me who spent time in Iraq and Afghanistan to trust our senior level leadership, because that trust was eroded over those 20 years in a very significant way. We all saw the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, and that was the best that our senior level leaders could do after 20 years to prepare for it, knowing that eventually we would leave, and that was the best they could do. So that's tough to stomach on that side. And then to see all the mission creeps, see all the admirals and generals sitting in front of Congress for all of those years, essentially saying the same thing while troops are on the ground as targets that are really hurting the situation, because we were propaganda tools for the enemy and allowed worldwide jihadi networks to focus on us, focus on the infidel in Iraq and Afghanistan. So doing a little more harm than good, creating more insurgents, creating more terrorists than we're taking off the board, that insurgent math. So there were a lot of issues there. So now we come to this again. So it's very, very tough. It's a hard sell for a lot of us, I think. But at the same time, it is the exact same policy that we've had for decades, multiple parties. And the question really is, okay, how close do you let this enemy get to acquiring a nuclear weapon? I mean, I don't know. Do you let them have a year? Do you wait till the day before? Do you wait for the 2 weeks before? And then how can you be sure? How do you trust that intelligence? And so obviously that part is well out of any of our hands as far as trusting intelligence and knowing how to corroborate it. That part is with our elected representatives and our intelligence officials and military leaders, whoever's getting that intelligence. So that's what we just don't know that. But what we can ask is how close? How close do you let them get to this weapon that will probably be used? Well, you don't want them to get it, obviously. Countries that already have it can't do anything about that. Can't do anything about Russia. Can't do anything about North Korea. Can't do anything about China. They already have it. But if you can keep someone who chants death to America and is in line with U.S. foreign policy for decades across both parties, just who's in office at the time, that's who has to deal with it. And so I think that's where we are right now.
I think Trump has been saying this for months, trying to get them to the negotiation table, giving them deadlines, telling them, hey, bad things are going to happen. And then it turned out bad things happened for them. I mean, he was serious about what he said. I think that's important for him to be seen as I'm keeping my word here. And it's interesting because, just how we feel with the whole, like there was weapons of mass destruction, just as a civilian, we feel like, we were cheated. I can't even begin to imagine what it's like for the guys that have been on the ground. And I know from talking to so many of you guys, like the special forces guys, looking back saying, what was this all for? What was this purpose? What was my service for? You don't want to see that happen with these guys now. And so now we're saying, like we've heard, they're going to get a nuclear weapon. They're going to get a nuclear weapon. Does it seem like there's more evidence that Iran was trying to build a nuclear weapon than there was that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction?
That's what we just don't know, because we don't have that intelligence. So we have no way of knowing. So it's just a guess. What I do know is that we have people in positions with the administration that have served on the ground in Iraq and Afghanistan. They are on the tactical end of those strategic level decisions that didn't work out so well for anyone. So my hope is, and of course, hope is never a very good course of action or strategy, is that they're taking the lessons of the past and applying them to a current problem set as wisdom. Now, no situation is exactly the same. It's just Iraq is fresh in most of our minds, but no situation is exactly the same as another. You can't have a model that fits every single country, every single scenario, there are too many variables involved. Iran has a rich history, of course, going back centuries, very nationalistic. Iraq was a little different than that. So I think we are working towards is obviously a non-nuclear Iran. They're very clear about that, but also leadership in place that falls into the U.S. camp and not the China-Russia camp. So this definitely goes beyond the borders of Iran. This is beyond just that acquisition of nuclear technology that allows them to weaponize it. but it does go beyond those borders, and it's global in nature as far as the impact of what we're doing right now, specifically China and Russia, who would like nothing more for us to get bogged down in Iran and another quagmire like we had in Iraq and Afghanistan. But the hope is that we do not do that because of the people who are now in positions of authority within the administration, the military, and but hey, we'll see.
I would imagine it comes with a very heavy heart to send troops into harm's way. I mean, it's not a position I would ever want to be in to make that decision. And you mentioned Russia. I mean, they're tied up with a 3-year war. They haven't been able to take Ukraine. They're losing hundreds of thousands of people. They got their own issues to really worry about. So I think that's kind of tied them up. But so let me close this out because I know your time is valuable here. You got to move. What do you see right now going forward? Future for Iran? What is the best case scenario out of this entire thing? Where are we a year from today where we could say this was a mission success?
Well, the mission success, I think they're narrowing it down because when we went into these negotiations over the last few weeks, there were 3 things on the table. There was the non-nuclear capability for Iran. There was the ballistic missile capability, degradation or elimination, and then there was the not supporting terrorist proxies. So those were the 3 things. But then as I hear the administration talk more and more about it, it seems like they're narrowing it down, particularly the vice president last night. He only focused on that nuclear side of it. So I think they might be narrowing down some of those objectives, possibly. I don't know, maybe he just wanted to focus on that last night rather than all 3. That's possible as well. But it seems like they're narrowing things down to focus on that. And but once again, there are unintended consequences to anything in life, but let's say specifically to this, to a military engagement like this. And then it's all about adapting to those unintended consequences. And that's something we were not very good at doing strategically over the 20 years in Afghanistan and all the years in Iraq. We were good at the tactical level, adapting to our enemy, but at the strategic level, they were very slow to adapt, if they ever adapted at all. So the hope is, once again, that we can deal with these unintended consequences that are bound to come from an engagement like this, into an endeavor like this, and then adapt to it quicker than our enemies. And I think we have people in place within the administration that can do that.
I pray that we do. All right. Targeted Beirut. I got the link to the book down in the description below. Anything else? Where do you want to send the people? You got pre-orders already for the new book? What do you got going on? Tell me where to go.
That's right. Got the 4th option here we talked about. So I'm doing my final edits on this thing, and off it goes to the printer by tomorrow morning. But that's really my modern interpretation, modern tribute to Have Gun Will Travel, which was a 1950s, 1960s Western television show. And this is my modern interpretation of that Stranger Comes to Town type of a thing. So there'll be hints of High Plains Drifter and Pale Rider and Shane, a little Magnificent Seven thrown in. Of course, I'm a child of the 80s, so there'll be a little sprinkle of some 80s television shows and movies in there as well, because that's part of my experience. I just can't help it. But I'm so fired up for how this book turned out, and it's a new character, new series, and comes out May 12th on hardcover, audiobook read by Ray Porter, who is fantastic, and ebook.
Come back, Shane. Come back, Shane.
That's it. You know,
Jack Carr, come back and see me. Honored to have you on. I got the links down there in the description below. Honored to have you on the AlecLace Show. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me on. You take care.
All right, grateful to have Jack Carr joining me on the podcast. Get down there, order a copy. Targeted Beirut, the 1983 Marine barracks bombing, and the untold origin story of the war on terror. I ordered it yesterday. Again, so much of this stuff over there, unless you're really tuned into it, is boring. I mean, a lot of it is. All of that stuff with the Sunnis, the Shiites. It's tough. But here's the thing. Ignorance is not an excuse, right? I mean, that's my own ignorance, from staying out of that. I need to do better. I'm going to, I ordered this book. I'm going to read up on it. Jack is somebody that has the knowledge. He's been there and served it. So I got to better equip myself. And hopefully, as we develop here and go on, I'll have a better, vocabulary to hit you guys with and break this stuff down when it does happen. But again, we are still going to focus mainly on what the hell's going on in our own country. But just to have a better broaden my horizons. I think, if you'd like to do the same, grab a copy of the book. I got the link down there in the description below. You can pick up a copy. All right, let's turn our attention now. I got my friend Bill Brown. He's a Navy SEAL, former Navy SEAL, Iraq combat veteran, a good friend of mine. I've known Bill now for quite a few years. I've swam across the Hudson River with Bill Brown. I've done that a couple of times. It's one of the most patriotic events all year long in New York City. Bill Brown is also he's a partner at Parlatour Law Group. His boss is Timothy Parler, and Timothy Parler is a special advisor to Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. So it's a pretty big group. Parler Law Group. Bill Brown is, again, he's an all-American hero. I think it was David Goggins called him the White David Goggins in his book. If you've ever read David Goggins' book, he's a true American hero. He's my friend. I'm going to bring him on now, and we're going to take on how he sees it, his breakdown of this entire Operation Epic Fury. Let's bring him on.
You're listening to the Alec Lace Show. The future is family.
All right, joining me now, former Navy SEAL Bill Brown. Welcome back to the Alec Lace Show.
Hey, Alex, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Always an honor to talk to you. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It feels like yesterday, really, that we were standing on the steps of Capitol Hill. We were pushing for Pete Hegseth to be confirmed as the Secretary of Defense, now Secretary of War. And I think from all signs I'm seeing here, Bill, he looks like the right man for the moment. What's your take, first off, on this Iran thing, how Pete Hegseth is handling this as Secretary of War?
I think back about the 1983 Beirut barracks bombing, the United States Marine Corps lost 241 Americans there. And that was by Hezbollah, which was funded and led and organized by the IRGC, which is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. What do I think about it? I think they absolutely have American blood on their hands. I also want to think about my time when I was in Iraq. I was in Iraq from 2004, 2005. It's not necessarily significant in itself, but it's actually where I operated, which is kind of significant. I operated in Baghdad and south of Iraq. And a lot of Americans might not realize this, but Iraq is kind of broken up by the Sunni portion of Islam and then the Shia portion of Islam. Iran represents the Shia portion of Islam, and where they live geographically is basically Baghdad and south is where I operated. Now, one of the things that the IRGC provided to the Shia militias, which they controlled and organized, basically their proxies, is they provided them these shape charges. And a lot of people won't realize what a shape charge is, but what a shape charge is almost like a mind. But what happens is it actually has a cone shape in the explosives. And when it detonates, basically it unfolds on itself and it actually creates a molten jet stream. That molten jet stream is used to basically pierce armored personnel vehicles in American U.S. vehicles. And that resulted in about 603 deaths of American servicemen, beautiful men and women who served this country from 2003 to 2011. And the Iraq Republican Guard, their Quds force, is actually responsible for that. So they again that was when I was in Iraq, that was probably about 17 to 20% of the casualties. That means about 17% to 20% of the casualties of Americans when I was in Iraq as a result of Iran. And so have no doubt that regime absolutely has American blood on its hands. Now, I want to tell you, it even got more personal for me recently. I represent, and actually, he wants me to state this. I represent Kevin Chambers. Now, Kevin Chambers is a Gold Star. A lot of Americans might not realize what a Gold Star is, but basically a Gold Star family member, somebody who lost their son or daughter, or maybe their spouse, somebody in their family that served their country and was killed overseas fighting for our nation. Now, one of the things that was happening is in the Red Sea, which is one of the hugest shipping lanes in the entire planet, especially when you talk about all the petroleum that comes in and out of there. The Iranians were using another Shia militia group called the Houthis to basically interfere with commerce. And one of the things they were doing is basically Iran was giving them ballistic missiles that basically threatened ships coming in and out of there. The SEAL teams were tasked to basically intercept that some of those missiles getting shipped from Iran to Yemen to the Houthis. I represent a Gold Star dad, Kevin Chambers. His son, Chris Chambers, is a beautiful Navy SEAL. And in January of 2024, he was killed. And he was killed when he was trying to intercept basically a dhow, a small boat, a small vessel that was basically transporting missile components from Iran to the Houthis. And unfortunately, that beautiful American died with another beautiful SEAL. And what happened was, thank God, the SEALs were successful in basically boarding that ship, detaining that ship, and confiscating Iranian missile components that were going to the Houthis. So here you have the Iranian regime, the jihadist Shia regime, basically interfering with commercial traffic in one of the most trafficked commercial shipping lanes in the entire planet. And it resulted in the death of two beautiful American Navy SEALs. One of them the father represented them. And so now I want to talk about, we can also talk about October 7th, and without a doubt, Hamas and how the current regime funded that, and thousands of deaths that resulted that. So what's happening here is the President Trump is basically, and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, is sending a message. Look, the message is that, as nations in a civilized global society, there's certain norms that we can accept behavior, and there's certain that are non-starters. Now, a jihadist ideology determined for world domination as a non-starter for nuclear capabilities. That's a non-starter. Now, President Trump and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, they took action. And a lot of times Americans don't realize that it's actually the intellectually right thing to do to take preemptive action at times. Okay, so now let's talk about the distinction and the comparison between President Obama's reactions or President Biden's reactions and President Trump's. So what happens with President Obama, how many planes full of pallets full of American cash? Did that deter the jihadist Iranian regime? No, it did not. Shortly after they gave them plane loads of money, you guys might not remember this, but they actually intercepted a small Navy SWCC boat, Special Warfare Combat Control boat, and they basically boarded that boat, had those American sailors on their knees with their hands behind their back at gunpoint. And they made sure it got televised on a national platform. That's the kind of treatment that you got when you gave them millions and millions of dollars. You basically emboldened this jihadist terror type of exporting type of network. And I think a lot of that actually led to some of the horrendous things that happened in Israel and across the world, and especially in Yemen. And in Lebanon. And so what's happening is we've had enough. And so we're basically saying, hey, you forfeited your right to lead. Now let's talk when I was in Iraq, right, in 2004, 2005, it's the first time women have ever voted in the history of Mesopotamia in Iraq. Now let's talk about what's happening now. You have millions and millions of Iranians taken to the streets protesting for women just to have the bare right to literally show their face, right? Now we want to talk about women's rights. You want to talk about just human rights. Okay, what's happening there is against human rights, is against women's rights, and we're on the right side of humanity here. Okay, we're on the right side of humanity. President Trump might have just saved humanity by ensuring that the jihadist regime will never get nuclear capabilities. And let's talk about something else. President Trump and the Secretary of War and the Secretary of State, we've learned from previous history, right? They're not trying to basically make a new regime. That's not what they're trying to do. What they're doing is basically they realized that jihadist regime was adverse to humanity, adverse to American interests, and absolutely had American blood on their hands, and absolutely would have done everything they can to get more American blood on their hands. So we made that variable so it cannot happen anymore. We're doing everything we can to deter that risk. Who knows how many lives this preemptive action has taken. And let's talk about something else it's doing. It's resetting the global stage. Our nation now is going to be seen, and should rightfully be seen, as the primary nation and the leader of the free world. And at a certain point, we're going to take action, right? We're going to be the adults in the room, but we're going to take surgical preemptive strikes. And we're doing it for our nation. We're doing it to hold, remember all those beautiful American lives lost in Beirut at the Marine Corps barracks in 1983? Remember all those beautiful American lives that were lost from 2003 to 2011 in Iraq? Because I remember, right? Because I was in Iraq, right? We remember, and what our government did, what President Trump did, what the Secretary of War did, is they held that leadership accountable. And they made this world a safer place. They made this world a safer place for Americans. They made this world a safer place for the beautiful women and people in Iran. There's Persians that are just advocating for just basic human rights, literally the right to show your face. All right. They're advocating for commercial. Look what they did. They're making commercial traffic now safer. They're making the Middle East safer. They're making the entire planet safer, because what they did is now they've negated the planet's #1 sponsor of terror. They've taken that leadership out. It's a beautiful thing. They did it with precision. And the operations that they pulled off, the coordination and the planning, it's one of the most advanced operations that has ever happened in the history of humanity.
Yeah, no doubt about that, Bill. And that's why, because like you said, you were in Iraq, you're a combat veteran of that war. And so many, what's happening right now, especially online, what we're seeing is the comparison of the reasons why we were in Iraq, which was weapons of mass destruction. We were sold that lie, weapons of mass destruction, and we went to war with Iraq. We were there. You were there in person. Now people are trying to compare that to here of saying Iran has the capabilities of getting a nuclear weapon. And so we're going in there to attack them. And they're saying it's the same thing as the weapons of mass destruction versus now the nuclear weapon. Do you see it that way? Or do you see this as completely different, how we're handling Iran versus how we went in Iraq?
Well, there's a distinct difference between the Iraq comparison and Iran comparison. When we went into Iraq did not bomb a Marine barracks in advance. They didn't import, right? The Saddam regime didn't export basically sophisticated mine technology, these shape charges, to specifically target American armored vehicles that resulted in the deaths of 603 American service members. They also didn't, let's talk about the shipping lanes, the commercial shipping lanes, right? Let's talk about how they threatened commercial shipping. Let's talk about the thousands of lives that were, think about all those Israelis that on October 7th, that were all those poor, young kids that were killed at the concert, and all those, the tragedies and the horrors that happened there. Let's talk about in Lebanon. Let's talk about in Yemen, right? They weren't exporting. Saddam Hussein and the Iraqi regime at the time, the Ba'athist Party, wasn't exporting this type of terror on a global scale, didn't have the American blood on his hands. And what we know is Iran was absolutely moving forward to nuclear capabilities. Now let's talk about something else, another comparison. Now, one of the things that how Iran was able to export and finance its terror was, besides the previous administration's emboldenment in basically trying to bribe them with millions of dollars in planes. But what else did they? Let's talk about what else their huge distinction is. China, right? China gets a lot of, guess what? They get a lot of oil from where? They get a lot of petroleum resources from where? At a huge discount from Iran, right? Guess what? At a Khamenei regime that's not pro-jihadist horror, that's not pro-communist China, is better for democracy, is better for our nation. And what else does it do? It makes it harder for our greatest adversary, China, to get a resource at a very cheap and under market price that they absolutely need. And so, the comparison is much distinct, right? The other thing we'd even talk about in the comparison is you didn't have millions of people taking to the streets begging for help. Literally, the Iranians are literally spray painting signs begging President Trump to intervene, begging the United States of America to help them. You didn't have, now one of the comparisons you did have, though, is I love the Kurdish people because I did work with them. And I feel I have a great sorrow for them and their people's continued prosecution in Syria, in Iran, in Iraq, and especially in Turkey. Now, Saddam did use chemical and biological agents on the Kurds. So he did commit horrors within his own people, which is similar to the horrors that Iran has been committing against its own people since inception.
Well, that's the big difference that I think. Like right now, I know that the morale, the people that support Trump still support him and see this as a good thing that he's doing, protecting a future strike. I know Secretary Rubio said today or yesterday, he was saying that had we waited until they attacked us, we would have had a lot more casualties than we're going to have by taking this preemptive strike. So it's just about Bill just trying to really, I guess, sell it to the American people, because nobody ever wants to see, especially after this 20 years with the GWAT, nobody wants to see our American soldiers be put into harm's way. And I think that Trump in his heart knows that. He would never do that to our service members if he didn't think it was absolutely necessary and it was all other options were exploited before he pulled the trigger on something like this.
There's no doubt that President Trump and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, love our nation. There's no doubt that they love the men and women who serve in our nation at harm's way. And I think that's one of the beautiful things is that if you even look at how they're operating in such an advanced and strategically, technologically advanced manner that it does two things. One is these are strategic strikes against strategic targets to do a couple things. One, to basically negate leadership, and then two, to negate basically military capabilities, right? And then they're also geared to what? To reduce the potential of American casualties. So if you look at the ways that they've reacted, you look at the operations that they conducted, they've done everything they do to reduce the risk of American casualties, and then two, what? To increase the possibility of basically mission success. And so these operations have no doubt, when Pete Hegseth was elected to the Secretary of War, he said he was focused, he wanted to get the military and the Pentagon focused on lethality and mission success. His time as Secretary of War has proven that he has been successful in those endeavors.
Yeah, it's been historic. I mean, just the Maduro raid itself, which is a whole nother chapter, with the way that they pulled that off was incredible. And this strike, I mean, how much more effective could you get in the planning where they wiped out this guy that'd been in charge for 47 years? So they took him out real quick. Where we look at Saddam Hussein, it was 9 months into the Iraq war before he was finally captured. With bin Laden, it was 9 years into the Afghan war before he was finally killed. And now with this, it was just within a couple of hours Khamenei is dead. Just within a couple hours, they plucked Maduro out of his living room. I mean, this is pretty historic stuff that we're seeing, especially from Trump and Pete Hegseth together. But this whole administration, I just think it looks like they have, a well-oiled machine. But where do you see right now? What do you want to see from this point forward, Bill? Because I know we don't want to see boots on the ground. We don't want to see a forever war. What do you think needs to happen right now, this week, in the immediate future here, in the next steps that we got to take?
Well, one of the things I look at is when I think what should the next steps be, I kind of do a compare and contrast to where we were successful and where we weren't. So where were we successful? Well, I look initially after 9/11 and how we were so successful in taking down the Taliban initially. And what did we do? We worked with the Northern Alliance. We supported them and with logistics, with weapons, and with spec operators. And basically, they were able to take down the Taliban relatively efficiently. I also look at with the surge, the Iraqi surge, when we worked with Sunni tribal leaders in Al Anbar province, and basically we helped them, we worked with them, with their support, built coalitions, and basically that's how we were basically able to flush out the jihadists. It's also very similar to how President Trump was successful in basically negating ISIS. So the pattern to be successful is basically it's a divide and conquer strategy. It's basically where we support basically internal elements that are basically not jihadist. Maybe they're not going to be the democracy that we are. But really, what is our primary goal? We're looking for stability, right? We're looking for long-term stability. We're looking for rational actors. What we need by that is we need individuals or entities that are not pro-jihadist, because that ideology is adverse to humanity. So so what I would recommend, and I'm sure they're very involved in this, and Langley, 100%, and other places, is basically supporting elements with inside Iran that want to, and we've seen millions of people take the streets that want to move forward in a peaceful manner and set up a society that basically is going to play well with others. And basically once we ID who those individuals are, who those entities are, then we want to support them. And that's the best way to work. We'll support them with logistics. We'll support them with finances. We'll support them with various support. And that's how we do it. And that's the way. And it's kind of interesting the way that format is, because it's actually taken Iran's using proxies to export terror and changing it. And now we're basically going to use Iranians to basically build a better future for Iran, the Persians, and the entire Middle East.
Yeah, and that's the last thing I'll hit on here, Bill. Is this the final piece to the actual peace in the Middle East? Is Iran the last stone really to fall, an obstacle in the way to actually achieving what we've all been calling for decades, which is peace in the Middle East?
I'm always going to be honest with you, Alex. I wish to God that was the case, but it's not. All right, here's the truth. There's a couple issues that make this area of the planet so volatile. One is it's basically petroleum, right? So it's our basically one of our number one energy resources on the planet, right? Well, there's a lot of known resources there, right? And so it's always going to be vital to basically global commerce. 100% it will. Now, unfortunately, it's also home to basically the jihadist ideology. And there's two versions of it. You have the Shia version, which is basically the previous government of Iran was the champion of, and then you have the Sunni version of it. Now, unfortunately, for the advancement of humanity, what the real issue is that jihadist ideology. And I believe the best way to negate that ideology is by open debate and by basically being upfront with it, calling it for what it is. The truth is, it's It is adverse because it promotes intolerance and violence upon others. And that's just the truth. It does. That ideology. And unfortunately, in a lot of poor places in the world, and there's a lot of poor places in the Middle East, it's a lot easier to use that ideology to mobilize basically a lot of individuals that haven't had the chance to really, have the technology and the information that we have, and to really critical think some of these ideas that are basically promote violence, promote extreme oppression on others. And so until we really are able to use technology to really highlight the how harmful this ideology, jihadist ideology is, there's still going to be serious problems in the Middle East because that ideology, unfortunately, is extremely entrenched there. But I do think technology and ability of access to information, I do think it's going to make it harder for reasonable actors to thoroughly believe its basically its tenets, its pillars.
Yeah, and hopefully too, Bill, just like you say, it's a dangerous thing here because we've had the border open for 4 years prior to Trump. We don't know how many. Nobody knows. Everyone's saying, are there sleeper cells here in America? Are they going to activate now? How many people are here? The truth is, nobody knows. We have no idea how many people are actually. I'm sure the CIA and all these other people have some sort of idea. I would hope they do. But I mean, just from having all those people here, last word on that. What's your advice to American citizens now worried about some kind of thing? We just seen the one guy, the gunman down in Texas, wearing the Iranian shirt. He had the praise Allah, property of Allah sweatshirt. What's your word to Americans staying vigilant right now in wake of all this stuff?
Well, there's a couple things. One is I think with technology and advancement of technology, it's very easy to track and monitor individuals. I think another 9/11 type of attack be very hard to pull off and plan and with the logistics, because of the technology and monitoring, the ability to monitor is extreme. And so I think the threat level in that is reduced. I think the possible threat level of lone wolf actors, that's there. And I think also, you look, Times Square. I've seen videos where, the call for prayer and they shut down Times Square. There is a populace in Michigan, in Minneapolis, in New York, in Dearborn, and some other places, Paterson, New Jersey, where there's absolutely, basically, in my opinion, some individuals that support the jihadist ideology. And there's one thing to promote your religion. It's another thing to use intimidation. And I do think shutting down Times Square is like a show of force and a form of intimidation. I'm not a fan of it. I think there's many beautiful Muslims in our country that add a lot to our country. But I do think there's absolutely the jihadist ideology is part of the Islamic religion. To say the truth, the Prophet Muhammad was a jihadist. He spread Islam by the sword, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so do I think am I worried about sleeper cells? There's a possibility, but I think with modern technology and ability for our agencies to monitor basically a lot of things happening within a digital world, I think it's a lot harder to pull off. But what I do believe in is I do think we're in this great ideological struggle. The jihadist ideology is out there. The wokeist ideology is out there. And they're both intolerant ideologies, which I believe are adverse to the growth of humanity. And I do think the best way to basically contribute to basically humanity is to speak up about it, engage in an open market of ideas, and explain why democracy, explain why free speech, explain why these ideas, capitalism, why the best product should rise, the best ideas should rise, why everybody should have the ability to talk and speak out about things. You look what happened to Charlie Kirk. They canceled him in the most absolute fashion, right? Because he was challenging those same ideas, those same ideologies. And so I say, speak up. This is where the real fight is. The real fight right now for the advancement of humanity is to explain why our ideas of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, free speech, right? Why capitalism, the best products, the best ideas should rise, due process, equality. Those ideas are right. And that's what, like the Statue of Liberty, that torch of freedom, that's what our country represents.
Yeah, Bill, always a banger, man. Always love having you on. I hope and pray that you're right, that we don't see any type of attack inside of our country. I pray that we'll be safe and we can minimize these lunatics like the guy down in Texas there. So always an honor to have you on. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you again down the line.
It's an honor to be on, Alex. Thank you.
All right, honored to have Bill Brown on the podcast. Great to see him again. Again, American hero, founder of the Navy SEAL Swim, partner over at Parlator Law Group. Check him out. You can find them on Twitter. I got his or X. I got his handle down there in the description below. I got the link to Parlator Law Group down there as well. Listen, again, I'm very I don't need a whole bunch of, reasons, excuses. We try to justify it. It's like, listen, I believe that Trump has been at this negotiation table with Iran for months. We've seen it, just like I said in the headlines. He gave him a 10-day deadline just recently on February 20th. They didn't listen. They got smacked. I mean, that's really what happened here. What is Trump supposed to do? Say, I'm going to give you this timeline. They don't do it. I'm going to give you that timeline. They don't do it. And how much longer before they don't take him seriously anymore? So, it's a good thing for the world. And listen, if your son or daughter was one of the casualties, do you feel the same way? I doubt it. Has there ever been a war where you felt like your son or daughter deserved to die for the country? I mean, I don't know. I've never been in that situation. I know most of them are very proud of their children's services, love the country. And it's a big deal for the presidents to decide to put them in harm's way. For the Democrat presidents, too, I'm sure. I hate Obama and Clinton and these guys as the best as the next guy, but I would never want to be in their shoes. I would never want to be in their shoes to have to decide to send somebody else's kid into battle. I mean, I would never want to do that. Few people have ever been in that position to do it. I mean, it comes with a heavy weight. And I pray for President Donald Trump. I pray for him. I pray for our country. I pray for our military. I pray for our parents of children in the military. I'm sure they're on heightened alert, heightened fear, anxiety of what's going on, no matter where they're stationed around the world. So it comes with a heavy price, all of this stuff. So that's kind of my breakdown here. What's your take on Operation Epic Fury? Get your click down below. Here's what I think. I think everybody who supported Trump prior to this Operation Epic Fury still supports him. I think everybody that hated Trump before it hate him now. I mean, I don't think anything of that has changed. I mean, that's the truth. I think the people that hate him are going to hate him no matter what. The people that support him are going to support him no matter what. And that's where I am. I support President Donald Trump. I believe he's the best president we've ever had. Look at what he's doing is historic. I think Pete Hegseth is the right man for the job for this moment. I think he has risen to the occasion. I think Marco Rubio as Secretary of State has been brilliant. I think we got the right team in place with America's best interest at heart. And that's what I believe. And so that's my breakdown. Let me know what you guys think. Get a comment down below. Come back Thursday. Got a big program scheduled. Follow me on X at AlecLace to find out all the upcoming guests. God bless our parents and all listeners out there. God bless our police, our first responders. God bless our military, our parents of our military soldiers, our active duty, and our veterans. God bless America. I'll see you guys on Thursday.
You're listening to the Alec Lace Show. The future is family.